On today's show, you may remember her from such hit series as NBC's Nurses and the WB's Unhappily Ever After. Please welcome actress and comedian Stephanie Hodge.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm so excited to be here today. You're lucky to be here. So am I.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Mike Rand Show. And today's special guest, you might remember her from such hit NBC series as Nurses, as well as the WB's Unhappily Ever After. And she's been on some other stuff as well that we're going to discuss today. Please welcome actress and comedian Stephanie Hodge. Hey, Stephanie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here.
We're going to have a great time, everybody. And the first thing I want to know, I've already got Stephanie laughing. We're already doing stand up because you know what? We have a stand up before the show. We have a guest and we have a little comedian that comes out here and entertains us. So, first thing I want to ask is now you grew up in Ohio, correct?
Yes, I did.
So, I'm from Connecticut. So, let me know what it's like to be in Ohio.
Ohio. What can you say about Ohio? Well, we have a lot of great things came from Ohio. We have more astronauts per capita than any other state. That's exciting. We have Rosemary Clooney, the aunt of George. That's exciting. What else do we have? Ouija board came from Ohio. A lot of interesting things came from Ohio, and it's beautiful. It really is
And Stephanie came
geographically.
from
And
Ohio.
I came from Ohio.
How long did you live in Ohio for?
Let's see, I moved out of Ohio when I was 20.
Okay.
I think 20, 21, 21. And
Okay.
I moved to
You went to
Minneapolis.
high school, and did you go to part of college in Ohio?
Yes, I did. I went to Wilmington College, Quaker Fine Institute of the Arts. And I also went to Ohio University for a year.
Okay. And tell me, I want to know, growing up in Ohio, what was your first job?
My very first job was I was the summer kid and then for my little town of Wilmington. And that meant that I was the kid that went around where everybody went on vacation. I went to their houses and collected their mail and their newspapers, and I fed their fish and took care of their animals. And yeah, that's what I did for my summers. I was the little gatekeeper for all the vacationers in my little hometown. I was 10.
And what was college like, and what did you major in college?
I majored in secondary education, child psychology, theater in college, and college was great. I really enjoyed college a lot. My father was a professor of art there and also the dean of men. So, it's a small town, man. My mother was principal of elementary school, and she was also my kindergarten teacher because I went to kindergarten. We had half day kindergarten. So in the morning, I went with Mrs. Briggs, who was also someone I referred to my aunt in the off hours. And then I went to my mother's classroom in the afternoon. So I had full day kindergarten, and my mother was my kindergarten teacher in the afternoon. And then I went to college, and I did not take my father's classes in college, but I was his assistant in his classroom. And I was also his secretary in his office, and I modeled for his drawing classes. So those were
Now,
other jobs I had, and college was great because I was surrounded by my family.
now we know you're a very funny person because eventually you became a comedian. So I want to know, in school, were you the class clown, or were you very well behaved and very studious in school?
I was a quiet class clown. I was terrified in school. Well, let's put it this way. The first time I ever skipped school, I was in high school, and Bart Taylor invited me out to lunch. And I loved Bart Taylor with all my heart. Continue to love him still love him. And if he asked you out to lunch, you went out to lunch because he was Bart Taylor. And I just worshiped Bart Taylor. And so that was the first time I was ever going to skip school. And I get in his car, and we're on this little side street that was a one-way street. And I hear this, hey. And I look over, and it's my mother, who is a member of the school board and a principal at the time. And she said, I think you need to be in school. And I think I'm calling your principal. So there was a little terror in my life throughout my school career, and its name was Wanda. So, yeah, I was pretty well behaved in school because there was my mom looking over my shoulder. And in that town, literally, if you burped at noon by 12:01, everybody in town, including your minister, knew it. So, yeah, I could have been a lot worse. I was a little, I don't know, rambunctious, I guess you'd say. Yeah, I wasn't the worst kid, but I wasn't the best kid either.
So now, how did you transition from when you were in college and then wind up in comedy? Did you have a job straight out of college, or did you set out to be a comedian? How did that work? Your
No, that was
roles
what
into
happened.
the
Literally, what happened was I was in high school, and I think it was my freshman year, and I was so shy. Um, I had a hard time even giving speeches in class or giving reports. And I was giving a speech, and they put me in speech class because I was supposed to loosen me up. So what do they do? They put you in front of everybody that you fear, your peers, and they make you give speeches because that's going to help you out. No, it gave you anxiety, but you can use anxiety. Unfortunately, I did. But I was giving a speech one day, and it wasn't a comedy speech, because they had us do comedic speeches and serious ones and all that, motivational. And I had kicked off my shoes, and my toes were doing this underneath the desk, but you could see them. So everyone's laughing at my feet, and no one's listening to my report. And that's when Kay Sweezig, the teacher in there, decided that I needed to be in theater. So she talked to my parents, and they put me into theater classes, and that's how that started. That was in high school. And I had done theater at the college because my dad was a college professor, of course. And so during the summer, the whole family did theater. It was summer theater. So I did little tiny things like Tea House of the August Moon. I was one of the little kids that ran through, you know but that was it. And there was always some nice college kid on one side releasing me, and another one going, over here, like a trained puppy, over here on the other side. So it was nothing. And the very first time I was on stage, I peed my pants. So I was a neurotic child. No real reason why, just a personality defect, I guess. Because, I didn't have a bad childhood. I had no reason to be like this. It was just, I guess, how the good Lord made me. So yeah, and when I got to college, I signed up for theater. By that time, I had started doing theater. I was still doing theater and summer theater at the college while I was in high school, and I started college early. So when I was a sophomore in high school, I started taking college classes because of a little advanced placement thing that happened somewhere in there, because I was allegedly really smart. But I think you lose that over the years, because you saw me trying to put the thing on the thing with the thing. You saw me trying to do that. So I had to get help. But so I don't know. So there was the high school theater thing that they were doing to try to make me feel better. Then they put me in a situation where I'm with almost adults taking classes, and it was education classes. And the my counselor at high school talked to the college counselor and decided it would be great for me to do theater there as well to give me more confidence. So that's how that all started.
What was it in particular that drew you to comedy?
Comedy was just a way to deal with stuff. I had so many insecurities and so much anxiety being in those situations. And honestly, the way they tried to help me just made things worse. I had to step up, or who knows what was going to happen to my brains. And I had so much anxiety that was the only thing I could do. It just happened. One day somebody says something to you and you snap back, and rather than snapping back in anger, I snapped back in sarcasm, and it seemed to work. So I think that was my defense mechanism, or my way to try to fit in, or try to be left alone too at on a certain level. Because if you can make somebody laugh, they're not going to pick on you. And I did get picked on a little because my father was a college professor at the college in town, and my mother was on the school board and principal. And mother had quite the reputation in town as being a very strong personality. And she did have a very strong person and very brave. I mean, she was a trendsetter. She was the first person to have the STAR program, and the advanced educational programs were put into place because of her in our whole educational system my hometown. So she did really positive things for the educational system, but she, being a woman in those years in the 60s and 70s, she had to bully her way through to get those things done. So she had to have a very strong personality, and she had to be really committed. And in a little tiny town in southern Ohio, that didn't exactly get treated with a tremendous amount of respect at all times. You know what I mean? So there would come times she would come home and she would swear for a good hour, and we would just sit quietly and wait for the storm to pass. But she did teach us to stand up for ourselves, and she did teach us to fight the good fights. So her sacrifice in that arena taught me a lot of how to deal with this arena. And that's good. And that's good. But I'm not quite the fighter that she was.
And now, your first time doing stand-up comedy, tell me about what that was like and where was it?
That was in Minneapolis at the Comedy Cabaret, which was a comedy club that I owned with Scott Hansen and Scott Novotny in uptown Minneapolis. And it was literally just a garage. It was a converted garage. And I think it sat like 120, maybe, if we cheated it a little. Um, and we had everything there. There were a lot of stand-ups, but it was more of it was a cabaret because we had drag queens that would come in there. That was great. I love drag queens. I love drag queens. I feel so good. If I'm surrounded by drag queens, let me die there. That's where I want to just slip away and surrounded me in a room full of drag queens. Happiest place on earth. And we had magicians, and we had this guy that would lay on his back and he'd put chalk between his toes, and he would draw one portrait over here, and then he would write the Declaration of Independence with his other foot over here on chalkboards. Weird stuff, wonderful stuff. We had a guy that would feed his dog yogurt and it would vomit on stage, and that was it. We'd only let him perform once because that's cruel. And let's see, we had Penn and Teller would come and they would try out their new stuff. And Tom Arnold did his first stage act on our stage. He had goldfish jump through a hoop. He was wearing a short sleeve sports shirt and a pair of ill fitting jeans. And he was just the nicest guy. And there were just a lot, there was just a lot of crazy things that went on there. And there was a woman who had come down, and we were teaching improv classes and doing improv on this stage. And we had a wonderful musician, Eugene Huddleston, who could play. I'm sure he could play any instrument that you handed him, but on the piano, I mean, he was Zeus. He was, Atlas. He could carry the whole world on his back on that piano and looked like he was sleeping. It was so easy. It looked so easy for him. And a miracle on a piano. And one of our improvisationalists, Doreen, I'm sorry, said to me, "You should do stand up. All these jerk guys can do it, and why don't you do it?" And I said, "Oh, I couldn't do stand up. I can't do it." "Well, act like one," she said. "You're an actress. I'll give you $50. I'll bet you $50 you don't have the nerve to act like one. You're an actress, act like one." So I wrote like 3 minutes, went up on stage, acted like one, got a great response. Never got the $50, but that was the beginning. It was a dare. It was, and she actually
So a
said,
dare got you into being a comedian.
yeah. And she actually said, "I triple dog dare you."
That's serious when they triple dog dare you.
Oh, that was a gauntlet dropped loudly. It clanged, man. You don't triple dog dare somebody.
Yep.
And it worked great. And then the next 300 times it was miserable. But, I'd been bitten by then. So
Yep. So tell us what it was like being a comedian, especially a female comedian back then.
it was hard and it was ugly. And on the other hand, it's kind of a privileged situation, on the other hand, because there just weren't any of us out there. The guys weren't, some of the guys were supportive. Some of them were. Louis Anderson was supportive. Wild Bill Bauer was supportive. Um, it was amazing who was supportive and who was not supportive. And the guys that were not supportive were just mean and cruel and like children. Girls can't play ball. Girls can't shoot hoops. It was like childish and stupid. And it really was. It was like bullies on the playground. And it was very hard to take seriously. But they tried, they would talk, you know, garbage to you. And there was one night, I forget who told me about it. I think it was Wild Bill. It could have been, well, it could have been Jeff Turbino was really nice to me. And he was very straightforward too. I don't know if you're aware of Jeff Turbino, but he's never blown smoke or been shy about stating anything in its fullest truth in his life. And this is one of the reasons I just love and adore him. But there was another club called Mickey Finn's, which was an AFL CIO union bar. And the guys would go down there. There's a whole bunch of guys. We weren't the first place. Comedy Cabaret was not the first place by any stretch of the imagination. And we weren't the first people to do it. Contrary to some myth that goes around that the Comedy Cabaret was the first place. No, was not. Not the inventors. No, no, no. Mickey Finn's was there, and there was another place, but I cannot remember the name of it, and I'm sorry about that. But Mickey Finn's was just this dark union bar filled with union men drinking. And these guys, I think it had been Louie and Wild Bill and Jeff Cesario and, oh my God, Jeff Gerbino, and had taken milk crates and built a stage and then just put a slab of wood down on it and a microphone. And they'd been going there to do stand up for quite a while. I don't know how long, but a while. And then you have all these union guys sitting there at these tables drinking, and it's a rough crowd. It's a rough place. And here's this little girl coming in her little dress with her little props. And I used props. props. I had a pair of ugly shoes and I went, ish, ish, ish. How bad is that? How bad? Tell me how bad that is. I know how bad that is. And you got these union guys, and I have a baby bonnet I cut the top out of, put it on my face like a diving mask, and went Mrs. Clouseau on her wedding night. Come on, that's really bad. I did bad stuff. And they let me go up there anyway. They told me about it and they let me go up because they said I deserved a chance. Louis Anderson said to me, sometimes you got to just keep talking. And he said, you might want to reconsider your approach. Isn't that the sweetest thing? I look back on that night and I wish I'd thanked him appropriately for his kindness. And then Jeff Turbino comes to me one night and he says, you got to get rid of those props. That's horrible. It's awful. It's not funny. It's sad. Talk about things. Talk about things. You're miserable. Everybody here is miserable. The whole world's miserable. Talk about that misery, Talk about that. And I must say, they were both right. They were both absolutely right.
And that
So
makes for the best comedy too, is life experience, right? That I mean, things
mhm.
that you're used to and things that you see. I mean, some of the things I wish I could remember that I could turn into comedy now, even though I remember so many things. I mean, what were some of the inspirations for you for your stand-up comedy starting out too?
um, this is so. When I was a kid, my dad used to bring comedy albums home, and he brought home Cheech and Chong. So I listened to a lot of comedy growing up as a kid. And then I watched it, we watched the Ed Sullivan Show and Stiller and Mira were big influences. And it was weird. My dad really, really steered me toward comedy when I was a kid growing up. He loved stand up. And so he would just sort of steer me towards it and we would listen to it together and watch it together. And my parents were both very, very, very funny people. Very funny people. And I have taken some of the things my mother said at family reunions and directly stolen them and put them in my act. And I would say 50% of the time they get a round of applause. So that'll give you some indication. So she may have been the bane of my existence at times, but I have the Wanda factor, so that's good.
And then how did you get into television and movies? What was your first part?
This is bizarre. This is like one of those stories. It is one of those stories. I had been out here in LA for probably a year, almost a year. And I had spent the majority of that time on the road doing gigs to make enough money to pay for my rent to stay here. And I think out of that first year, I think I'd been here 11 months, and out of that 11 months, I had spent 7 on the road just trying to make money to pay the rent. And I'd been down to the improv. I'd been everywhere that you could go, open mic, open mic. And I had just decided that night I was going to go back to Ohio, be a teacher, be a school teacher, you know, give myself a year, which is stupid. To give yourself 1 year to make a mark in LA is just about as Ohio dumb as you can get. Some little Quaker girl from Ohio comes out here with no real connections, nobody in a position that can really help her. Except I did have a cousin out here who worked for Paramount. And when I called him just to say hello and to let him know that our granny had sent him well wishes and wanted to give him her new phone number, he said, I'm not going to help you. I don't even know why you called. And he hung up on me and he never did get Granny's new number. But Granny was mad about that. So I don't know what happened to him and I don't really care. That was about family. That wasn't about help. Granny kind of out of her will too. So there you go. You don't mess with Kentucky relatives. But what was I talking about? Seriously, what was I talking about?
How you got transitioned into acting, how you started into
Oh,
acting.
acting. I decided I was going to go home and be a teacher, and that night I just went to the improv and signed up to do open mic. Went up, did open mic, had a really good set. Sat down at the bar, ordered myself a drink, and this guy named Danny Robinson from APA agency sat down next to me and says, how would you like an agent? And I said, sure, I'd like an agent. He said, how would you like to audition for a TV show? I said, sure, I'd like to audition for a TV show. He said, well, it's called Nurses and the auditions are coming up this week. Here's my card. Come to my office on Monday. I'm like, sure, I'll come to your office on Monday. And I did. And I did the audition and I got the show.
Did you mean Sugar and Spice?
Yes, I did.
Nurses was a little bit later. Hold on, Stephanie. Sugar and Spice was Sugar and Spice.
Sugar and Spice. I loved
Sugar and
Sugar and
Spice, yeah.
Spice.
And you had really big hair
I
in
did. And
Sugar.
that was all my hair. That
Tell
was
me
my,
about that. You worked. Loretta Devine was on that show,
oh my
and
God.
also Vicki
I
Lynn
love,
Reynolds and Leslie Jordan was a recurring character on there too. So tell
yes,
me
he
about that
was.
show.
That show was so much fun to do. I'm telling you. Well, first of all, you got two dream girls there. So Loretta Devine and Vicki Lynn were both in Dream Girls. And when those women decided to just burst into song, it was like the heavens opened up on that in that room. I never heard people sing like that before in my life. There was a purity of tone, and on a studio stage, the way it reverberates off those walls, it was heavenly. Honestly, it was just heavenly, just amazing to me. And I couldn't carry a tune from here to the wastebasket. I just I have three notes, and if you stay within those notes, I sound fabulous. But these women can sing like nobody's business, and that was such a joy. It was a joy working on that show. And Leslie Jordan, oh my God, that man is joy. Truly, he was joy, and he would tell us the most wonderful stories, and you would just laugh until you hurt being around him. And he's just amazing. He's just the most amazing person. And I'm so fortunate to have worked with him. You know, that's the first thing is you just feel so lucky to have had him influence your life for a little bit, bring that energy into your world for a little while. It's just such an extraordinary event. And you don't forget that energy. That's a really special thing. And Dana Hill was in that show too. And that was something. We became really good friends. That was nice. And I met my husband on that show. Yep. And the executive producer kept pushing us together. She kept saying, Stephanie, why don't you go stand over there by Lance and he'll give you your cue? I'm like, Stephanie, why don't you have Lance walk you back to your dressing room? It's just down the hall. Well, I know, but I'd feel more comfortable if you were with someone safe. He had the whole thing planned. And we've been married for 33 years this month. So that's sugar and spice. That was
That is
wonderful.
Sugar and Spice and everything nice,
I got
right?
to sing with my head in a bucket. That was nice. I
Yep.
sound really good with my head in a bucket. I learned that. That was good to learn. But those
And
women
then,
are just lovely, really good
yeah,
people. Seriously, really good people.
yep. And then after that, you did a little talk variety show called My Talk Show. Can you tell me a little bit about that show?
That was great because I got to be Peter Noon of Herman's Hermits, and I kissed William Shatner. And let's see what else. Oh, I met Ron Reagan Jr. and got his autograph, and we had the best time talking. That was really cool. And they had all these different people on every week for the talk show. So, being the sidekick to the talk show host, I got to meet all these people and work with them. I got to work with Dr. Dre. That was so much fun. And that was a Second City adventure. So, the people I was working with were just the ideas and the thought processing and the improvising was just, that was really exciting. That was exciting and fun.
And then that leads us to one of my favorite shows, Nurses. Now, Nurses was a spin-off of Empty Nest, which within itself was a spin-off of the Golden Girls. So
Yes.
basically, Empty Nest, they had Harry Weston with um, Nurse Laverne, who worked with him, and they were in the hospital. You were friends with your character, Sandy. You were Nurse Sandy Miller, and you were friends with Laverne. And that's kind of
Yes.
how the setup kind of worked. You guys were in different parts of the hospital. You were in 3 West. They were in another wing of the hospital. And that's basically the premise. Then you and the nurses. So tell me how you got cast on Nurses. How did that come about?
Oh my gosh. I got this, it was very bizarre. I got called into Tony Thomas's office. It was a different audition, boy, I'll tell you. Because I got called into Tony Thomas's office. I didn't go through the normal rigors of an audition where you go in and you read for all the people and they're all sitting behind a desk staring at you and you just want to pee and run. That was not the process. I went into his office. We had a conversation. Paul Witt came in. There were a couple other. Susan Harris came in. Susan Harris came in as an actress, knowing all about Susan Harris and Soap and all the other things that she'd done. That I was starstruck right there to meet Susan Harris, extraordinary writer. Um, and I read with a reader, and then they brought a couple of women in, and I don't remember who they were. And then they brought Arnisha Walker in, and we read together. And they said, "Okay, thanks, you got it." And no one ever told me on spot that I had anything before or since. So it was really unique. It was almost suspect. it was so unique. But I just remember looking at Arnisha and feeling when she walked in the room, first of all, I knew who she was, which always helps. And second of all, she just felt there, we felt connected, like we were going to be friends, like it was going to be okay. So that was very helpful. But that was a very unique experience. And it was nice. And I really enjoyed Nurses. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. So, like I said, your character was friends first with Laverne Todd over from
Yes,
Empty.
Laverne, my
So,
friend
tell me what it
Park.
was like working with Miss Laverne.
I love I love Park overall. She's just, what you see in Park is exactly what you get from Park. Park is one of the most open, honest, down to earth people you're ever going to meet. Seriously, we're friends. And in her retirement from acting, she is an environmentalist and she does so much work with animals. She's like living my life that I want. She lives in Tennessee on this beautiful acreage, and she's working environmentally. She's working to save a river and the air where she lives. because they've just polluted it to no ends. It's terrible. It's an awful mess. And honestly, if a stray walks up to her house, it's hers. She's going to keep it healthy, keep it alive for longer than it's supposed to live, and it's going to be happier than any animal is supposed to be. And that's Bark. And she's funny and she's just endearing and she has more energy than anybody's supposed to have. And I don't know how she manages it. But she's a good person. She really is. She is just a
Yep,
good
Park overall
person.
hilarious. And now let's talk about who you were talking about before, Arnisha Walker.
I need that.
Yes, she is just hilarious. She played Nurse Annie Rowland. So tell me what it was like working with her.
It was it was hilarious working with her. You never knew with her. Arnisha, Arnisha has a freedom in her creativity that I had to learn from her. And I would she just she can slip on a character like a bathrobe, just comfortably and with great finesse. And if she ever went up on her line, she'd just keep talking and then she'd turn around quickly and run away. She didn't go up very often. She really did. But boy, she would just keep going, trying to fix it. We would give each other that note. I would quit. I would just stop because I knew I'm just going to make it worse. But she would just keep going. And then when she knew she couldn't save it, she'd just turn around and run away. Which was a clear cut, which is good for when you're editing. You know exactly where to cut when Arnisha turns and runs. So we had a lot of fun. And we did things. We'd put things in each other's pockets, that weren't supposed to be there. And we had those charts. She would write things on the charts that was inappropriate or draw little pictures.
Trying to make you goof up your lines when you're looking at the charts on camera.
Hmm.
And then another funny character on the show
Oh,
was nurse Julie Milbury, who was played by Mary Jo Keenan. She played the new nurse on the block. So tell us what it was like working with her.
You know how smart you have to be to play a character that's stupid. You, I think that's a testament to how intelligent Mary Jo is, because that character was just as dumb as a doorknob. And honestly, Mary Jo, one of the smartest people I've ever met, and just knew precisely how to walk into this part of a wall, or trip over not a something, or just do a whole chart upside down. Just subtle little things that were hilarious and just so perfect for that character that weren't directed, weren't in the script, but that just added such a beautiful, hilarious layer to that wonderful, sad character. Oh, excuse me. Because that character was so sweet and so loving, and there was something just so sad in that character. Constantly, she's scraping herself all the time. And when you go back and watch those, she's always, there's always something wrong. There's always something irritating her clothes or her hair, a little scrape, a little hangnail, a little something. And I just love that so much that she did those things. And
One
she's quite a
funny episode that
fashionista.
one funny episode I remember is when Annie, Nurse Roland, was like the shift leader during season two. And then she went away for the weekend or something like that and left Julie in charge. The chaos is, why is Julie one left in charge? Because she figured, well, if I leave the dumb one in charge, everyone will work. They'll all work harder to get the stuff done. I thought that was hilarious. Another great person on the show was Ada Maris, who
Ada.
played Gina Cuevas. Tell us about working with her.
Oh, Ada. I always felt like Ada was floating above the rest of us. You know what I mean? Her character was just sort of, and always just a little lady. She was like a holy mother. You know what I mean? She was like a little saintly, a little bit saintly. Not in a bad way. I don't mean this in a bad way at all. I liked it. I thought it was great. But she was just always just, oh, tisk tisk, really, just trying to be good. She's trying so hard to be good. You know, there's something evil in that character. You know, deep inside there, there was something dark in there.
Well, the funny thing is, then after in season three, after you had left the show, Gina's character was pregnant with Hank, and
Hmm.
she wouldn't tell anyone. And she's coming into work. I think maybe she was like 7 months pregnant, and she's like, she's like, I have this big announcement to make, and they're all looking like, seriously. We know, Gina. We know. I mean, that's the kind of character Gina's character was. Ada's
Yeah.
character was, rather.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
very, very fun. Made for some funny moments on the show.
I thought that was a great turn.
Yep.
That was
And
a
then
great turn.
Dr. Hank Kaplan, played by
Doctor.
Kip Hillman.
Yeah. Kip. He's in Africa, South Africa. I liked Kip. Kip was great. He was fun. He was so silly. He was just the silliest thing. He was like a gigantic child with moments of an adult brain. And I don't mean that. That's the best thing. You know what I mean? That's the best thing. Again, with those little moments of improvising. Again, with those, last second things that he's just going to throw in. So be prepared. Stay on your feet. And that's good. That's a great thing.
Yep.
That's a good thing. He did burp a lot, though. Gassy guy. He burped a lot.
And we did have Paco Ortiz, played by Carlos Lacamora.
Carlos, the camera, yeah. Every time I see him in something, I yell, Carlos. My husband's like, stop yelling his name every time you see him. Okay, just stop it. I had a particular affection for Carlos. Just he is a good man, you know? Good man. Very good man.
And
Very
then in season one, you also had Jeff Altman, who was also a comedian as well. Very funny. He was only there the first
fair.
season, but tell us a little bit about Jeff.
Jeff is very funny. He's very, very funny. Very funny guy. A lot of tremendous amount of energy. Does have a tendency to overthink a little bit. I mean, there's a button that a lot of us have that they used to be around a lot, and it just says it's only TV. It's only TV. And I always remember saying to Jeff a couple of times, when they uncover the remains of this civilization about 6 feet down sometime in the future, they're going to uncover the remains of this civilization. They're going to find a videotape of nurses and they're going to pop it in some machine that they have that's going to decode it. And they're going to say, oh, yeah, that's what it was all about. It's not going to happen like that. It's okay. It's only TV. It's only TV. It's not going to find anything. Trust me. It's okay. It's okay. Because his perfectionism was so precise. His perfectionism was perfectionism. And I'd never worked with anybody that didn't have that slide, because you got to have the slide. You have to be able to walk away from a scene that you don't think was perfect and let the director say, that's what I wanted. That's perfect for me. or let the producers say that and not think it's perfect yourself because it's not about you. It's not about what you think. You do the job they want you to do. And then you go home and say, they liked it. I'm good. Even if you're not. So
Yes,
he,
you got to trust the director because that's what they're there for, you know?
and every time he had an issue, he was kind. He didn't get mad. He wasn't a problem to work with under any circumstances at all. He would just, it would be done, it would be in the can, and he would still be thinking about it. And you have to let it go. And he had a hard time letting it go sometimes. And he was so good. That's the thing. He's like, I wanted to there was a couple of times I would grab him and shake him and he'd go, you couldn't be any better. You couldn't have done that any better. Snap out of it. You're good.
Yeah, once it's filmed, then you can't be overthinking it, you know? That I could have done it better. I could have done it this way. I could have done that. You got to get one take at some point, you know?
Yeah. And my God, if he did something in one take, he couldn't accept that, boy.
Yeah.
But he's so good. He was so good.
Do you have any idea why he left after season one? What happened there?
There were some, he was going through a divorce and he had a child and there were some family things he had to deal with that he didn't think he could deal with if his attention was divided. So did that for his child.
Yeah. Okay. And then after he left the series, his character was replaced by Marcus Flanagan, who played Luke
Yeah.
Fitzgerald. So tell us about him.
I don't think he ever stood still. I don't know that, honestly, I would love to rewatch all of the episodes again that he's in to see if he ever stood still. Because I always felt like he was in constant movement, which is perfect for his character. Just perfect for his character. But I always felt like he was constantly moving and everything was just a momentary stop, momentary idle. He would be idling instead of stopping. He was great, fun to work with. Another really good guy. Didn't have gas either, which is good. One guy with gas is enough. And there's always somebody with gas, but not Luke.
Then going back a second to season one, another hilarious person you had on the show was Florence Stanley, who played
Oh,
Dr. Riskin. Now, many of you watching, she was also on so many shows. She was on Night Court, My Two Dads, like very, very famous actress. A lot of stuff she's been on. Tell us what it was like working with her.
I was so freaked out when they brought her in because I am such a fan. It's one of those things where you get the opportunity to work with somebody that you've watched and studied and you admire. Because as an actress, you find those people that you can identify with and you watch their work to learn from them and see where they go and how they do. And just a lot of people, you just find people that you can do that with so that it's like little private classes when you watch them work. She was one of those people for me. So to work with her was really big for me. And I remember we had a scene together. We had this little scene together, and I had a line with her. And I have a tendency to match energies with the other character in the scene as a first choice. And with her, that's not always the best choice because of her specific energy. And I had to learn that. She said something to me like, "Well, what's going to happen now?" And I said, "Well, if I knew that, I'd tell you." And she goes, "My God, you're not going to say it like that, are you?" And I went, "Apparently not." And everybody started laughing. And it was the worst choice for me. I made the worst choice. That was a bad choice. I should not have met that energy with that line. And then to meet it again with the response was just insulting. I felt like I had been, and she just threw her head back and laughed. She rubbed my shoulders and said, "Let's do this one again."
Do you have any idea why she wasn't around for after season one?
I don't know. I really don't know. I wished so hard she had been,
Yeah. And
but
then
she was
joining,
something. I took her to lunch. I mean, I was like, let's go to lunch every day. Let's, let's hang out. And she did. She went to lunch with me all the time. We hung out. It was great. It was
yep.
great.
And then in season two, joining the cast as well was David Rash, who played Jack Trenton.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. I'd seen him in so many things. And then there he was. Very interesting cat. Very interesting cat. I don't, it was weird. I always thought, you've done so many things. Do you know what you've done? You know what I mean? It's like somebody with a resume and you like go, there's more. You have to show him. It's like, I felt like, okay, it's like he had no clue what he'd done. It's like, quit acting like just started. Come on. It was the strangest thing. It took him a minute to relax into us. It really did. It took him a minute to relax into us. But then once he did, it was great. It was fine. But and I imagine jumping onto that moving train wasn't exactly easy, especially since the majority of us, you put these women together, women who work together have a tendency to, and we get along, bond, and we're so connected to a certain degree, especially since we're all friends in the show and we're all friends off the show and we're connecting with each other and in on different levels in different ways, and we have a respect for one another. And then you throw a guy in there, another guy in there. I think every time a new guy came on, it was a little intimidating. It must have been a little intimidating. So it took him for a minute to relax with us. I think he seemed a little stiff at first. And I felt like, you can relax because look at all the things you've done. Relax. Why would you be not relaxed? Look at everything
Yep.
you've done. Relax into your resume, pal. You got proof here. You can do things. It's okay.
And then, you had so many crossovers being a spinoff with Empty Nest. You had Harry Weston come visit, Charlie Dietz, those famous actors as well.
Yeah.
Carol, Diane Manoff from Empty Nest came to visit as well, which was great. And then also, you had the opportunity a couple times. You had from the Golden Girls itself, you had Betty White, Rue McClanahan. And then in season three, Estelle Getty as well. So you didn't get to meet Estelle there, but the other two, tell us what it was like working with Betty White and Rue McClanahan.
I'm telling you, Betty White is a saint. I actually, Betty White, it's like all the fantasy everybody has about Betty White. It's true. It's all true. This is the weirdest thing. I have these little quarter carat diamond earrings. They're just, and out here, a little quarter carat diamond earring. Please, people flush those down the toilet. I don't. I'm from Ohio. A quarter carat's a quarter carat. You know what I'm saying? Those are diamonds. One of them fell out of my ear. Betty's having none of it. She's like, oh no, we're going to find that earring. She's on her hands and knees, my friend. Betty White, in her little dress, is on her hands and knees, crawling around this little room with me on my hands and knees. What I deserve to be on my hands and knees, finding my earring, and she found it. And she jumped up and she went and cleaned it on her jacket. Betty White was on her hands and knees to find my little quarter carat diamond earring. And she did. That's Betty White. And then she didn't like the way the back of my hair looked, so she brushed the back of my hair out. That's Betty White. And then we were doing some photo shoots for the crossover. And you remember the dog that was on Empty Nest? Well, this is a little blue. Well, the dog got very excited. And Betty looked at the dog and said, I put my lipstick away, you put yours away. And I almost died. She's going, everybody put your lipsticks away. Time for a photograph. That almost killed me. But that's Betty. She's just as genuine as she could possibly be. It's like
Yep.
just like Park. What you see is exactly what you get.
Do you have any memories of Rue?
Yes. She's very nice. She's a very nice lady. She's not as warm and fuzzy as Betty. And she looked right here the whole time we had a scene. That's an old actor's trick. Not an old actor's trick. That's an actor's old trick. You know, I didn't mean to call her old, but she looked right here the whole time. She never made eye contact with me. And I'm one of those annoying eye contact actors. I'm going to look you right into your soul when I'm talking to you as an actor. And she does the old trick. And that's fine. I just wasn't expecting it. So at first it was kind of a little startling, but no, breezed right through the scenes with her. Every line perfect, every move perfect. For her, it was perfect. I was less so because I was a little, intimidated.
Now, Nurses ran from 1991 to 1994. NBC did actually have another sitcom set in a hospital centered around nurses, which was called 13 East, which was in the summer of 1989 and 1990. And I wanted to ask you if you ever saw that show and were any of the people that worked on that show on your show, if that was sort of like a little inspiration for your show.
I never saw that show.
Okay.
Isn't that awful? It was
Yeah.
probably out of bitterness.
Yeah, because it was short-lived. It was funny too. But it was like the same sort of premise, nurses in a hospital. And I thought it was interesting then when Empty Nest spun off and did nurses.
Yeah.
And I was like you just kind of had sort of that show a couple of years, the season before and the season that, and it didn't last.
I don't know. It's funny because when you look back, you think, okay, here's the inspiration for that. And here's the inspiration. I wouldn't doubt it. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows where
And
people
the
get their
actress,
inspiration.
I forget the actress's name right now, that played Nurse Maggie on that show. She's a famous actress on a lot of stuff. She was actually on Married with Children in the shoe store with Al Bundy a few times too. I remember her, but she played the
Uh,
head nurse in that show. And then also, so unfortunately, you didn't last to season three. You weren't there for season three. And I want to ask you why you left, but you know what, Stephanie?
you can
Just
ask me.
like back in the day when they had those little cliffhangers at the end of sitcoms,
Mhm.
sadly, audience, we're going to leave you in a cliffhanger. If you want to know what happened to Stephanie, why she was on not in season three of Nurses, as well as Unhappily Ever After, we're going to talk about, and all this other stuff. Please tune in next time to the Mike Rand Show. We are out of time today. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, thank you. This is fun. Thank you so much.
Can you tell everybody how they can keep up with you?
Yes, I'm in a new series that's going to be coming out in
Oh,
the
wait, save
late
that
summer.
promotion. Save that promotion for next time. No, no, no. I meant on social media.
On social media, yeah, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on all that stuff. Threads, Blue Sky.
All right, we'll put those links. I'll have them up on the screen at the end of this episode. You guys can keep up with me on obviously I'm on YouTube at official Mike Rand and slash the Mike Rand. You can also listen to this on iTunes, Apple iTunes Podcasts, whatever it's called, Apple Podcasts. I'm screwing it up. iTunes is the music portion. But you can listen to this on Apple Podcasts and follow me as well on social media. I'm on Facebook at official Mike Rand, as well as Instagram at official Mike Rand. X is Mike Rand.com, like the website, MikeRand.com. I'm all over the place as well, so you can find me somewhere. All right, everybody. Tune in next time for part 2 of Stephanie Hodge. We will talk to you all soon. Bye, everybody.